Hi everyone, I'm Ben, and this is the Board Game Blueprint. This week we're going to have our first mechanics monologue, which is going to be a segment in which I discuss in depth a mechanic that you can use in a future game design of your own. This week we're going to discuss drafting, which is most commonly seen with cards because it kind of fits with that component, as we sort of discussed in the previous episode. Now, I've seen drafting in two sorts of ways. The main one that I've seen is a market of cards that players in turn order get to choose from. This kind of gives the first player an advantage with the most variety or most options that they can make, while the last player has normally, well, the fewest. However, there's another popular version of drafting where players have kind of that market of cards as a hand that they start with, each player having their own, and they get to choose a card from that hand, then pass it to the next player, every player passing. What this means is that everyone around the table gets that first player advantage, and I think provides a greater feeling of satisfaction overall. So let's jump over to the table next door and take a closer look at some games from the game Crafter that use card drafting as one of the central mechanics. Draftcar is a clever car drafting game that uses the mechanic in a pretty cool way. At the beginning of the game, each player will decide on a car they want to represent themselves. And then, with a hand of 7 cards, the first player will pick one to play on a car. They will then pass the rest of their hand to the player on their left, and that player will do the same, playing a car from their hand onto a car, and handing the rest to the next player. Once all cars have cards played on them, we'll reveal the direction and speed of each car, then resolve from front to back. By comparing relative values, we'll see which cars go ahead of each other and then play another lap. After 3 laps in a game that has more than 2 players, whichever car is in the lead is the winner. The draft mechanic in Draftcar is one that's been seen before in other games like Sushi Go or 7 Wonders. But what I like about Draftcar, or what caught my eye the most, is that the drafting is not the only mechanism inside. In fact, it's kind of used in a way to limit options as the round goes on, or as the turns pass between players. It really gives an incentive for your card to be put up in front, so that you have more choices about where to place your draft cards in the next round. The other cool thing is that it supports up to 10 players. That's right, each player gets their own car that they can bank on. A more in-depth video walkthrough can be seen at the Draftcar Game Crafter shop page in the description below. Death Pit Duels is another game that utilizes the drafting mechanic, but in a different sense from Sushi Go or 7 Wonders. In this game, player A will draw 5 cards from the draft deck, then place them out onto the table. In an I cut, you choose fashion, so that 2 of the cards will be grouped together, 2 more cards will be grouped together, and 1 card will be left out. Player B will then choose one of the 2 pairs to add into their hand, while player A takes the remainder, and so on and so forth, until the duel phase begins. When both players have 12 fighters to their name, they will begin the duel. They will draw the top card of their fighters, and then, from their 12 starting cards, choose one to amplify the combat value listed for each one. They'll also compare special effects and determine the winner, who will then gain a gold reward. Play continues until all fighters have entered the ring, and whichever player ends up with the most gold at the end wins. In a way similar to Draftcar, Death Pit Duels utilizes a simple mechanic, drafting, and combines it with another to form a game experience that I haven't really seen before. I think as a two-player game, it especially pits the two players against each other with lots of mind games and bluffing that makes for a really great experience. I also personally love kind of combat-oriented games, so this one was sure to be up my alley. Ever since Clank hit the shelves, combining deck building, maybe another mechanic we'll have to put into future Monologue, and board movement, I think we're going to see a lot more of that with mechanics of all kinds and the future of board games. And that's what I really liked about Draftcar and Death Pit Duels. If you have a favorite draft mechanic that I missed, please leave it in the comments below so that I can use it for future reference. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so that you can stay up to date on future content like this. As always, I'm Ben. This has been another episode of the Board Game Blueprint, and together, let's build something great.